Two dusty men walked into the most powerful bank in California. They were carrying a small leather bag. They did not want to sell anything. They just wanted to leave it in the vault overnight. And they would not say a word about what was inside. That bag was about to cost the richest men in America a fortune. The whole thing came apart because of one tiny detail on one small rock. Stick around for the ending because the last twist is my favorite part. Let me take you back to San Francisco in the early 1870s. The new money came from silver over in Nevada, and the man sitting on top of all of it was a banker named William Ralston. Ralston ran the Bank of California, and he funded half the West Coast. Meanwhile, the newspapers were full of stories out of South Africa, diamonds coming straight out of riverbeds. If South Africa has diamonds, why not America? In 1872, geologists still did not know how diamonds form. That gap in knowledge was the door. Two men from Kentucky walked right through it. Philip Arnold was a war veteran who had chased gold west and stayed. He kept the books at a company that made diamond-tipped drills, so he had easy access to cheap, flawed industrial diamonds. Nobody ever counts the broken ones. His older cousin John Slack came along for the ride. Arnold did all the talking. Slack just stood there looking like he wished he were somewhere else. Nobody believes two salesmen. Everybody believes one salesman and one nervous farmer who wants to go home. So, the pair walked into a financier's office with that leather bag. They asked him to hold it, and he swore he would keep it quiet. He broke that promise the same afternoon. The bag made its way over to the Bank of California. A teller opened it up and found hundreds of rough diamonds. There were rubies in there too, plus sapphires and emeralds. And just like that, Ralston was in. The investors wanted more proof, so they advanced Arnold some cash. Arnold took that cash straight to London. He and Slack checked into a hotel under fake names. Then they bought thousands of junk stones from a gem dealer. Cheap rough rubies, garnets, and reject diamonds nobody else wanted. The investors had just bought the evidence that would be used against them. The pair came back west, claiming they were hauling a fortune in gems. They made a whole scene out of it, right there on the train platform. And they swore they had lost an entire bag crossing a flooded river. You cannot inspect a bag that fell in a river. That is the trick, right there. Every time somebody wanted proof, the proof had just been lost. Or it was a secret. Or it was way out west somewhere. By now, the investors wanted a real expert to look at the stones, so they took them to a lawyer's house in New York. In that room sat a Civil War general, a congressman, and a newspaper editor. And the man doing the appraisal was Charles Tiffany. Yes, that Tiffany. These were, he said, without question, precious stones of enormous value. 2 days later, he put a price on just a fraction of the pile, $150,000. There was only one problem. Tiffany built his entire career on cut and polished gems. He had almost no experience with rough stones straight out of the dirt. Every stone those two men owned was worth maybe $25,000. The most trusted jeweler in the country was not even close. Still, the investors ran one more check. They hired Henry Janin, the mining expert everybody trusted. Janin had inspected dozens of mines and never once been wrong. The party took a train into Wyoming, then rode for days on horseback. And for the last stretch, the investors wore blindfolds. Grown men in top hats, blindfolded on mules out in the high desert. They pulled the blindfolds off on a windswept mesa. The first stone was spotted by an English friend of one of the investors. How convenient. Within an hour, they were pulling diamonds out of the ground, then rubies, then sapphires, then emeralds. Janin walked the site and called it the most important discovery of the age. He staked out thousands of acres for the company. About one of them had anything in it at all. The salted patch was about the size of a football field. Arnold and Slack had spent the winter poking holes in that dirt with a stick. A company went up in a matter of weeks. On the board sat Ralston himself, and the man who handled money for the Rothschilds. Meanwhile, prospectors poured into Colorado, Arizona, and New Mexico. Grown men crawling across the desert, hoping to find diamonds lying loose in the dirt. Then, that August, the Attorney General of the United States settled a legal question. Did the mining law cover diamonds? He ruled that it did. The federal government adjusted American law for a mine that did not exist. Arnold and Slack sold every right they had and walked away. Their take was more than $600,000. That is somewhere around $15 million in today's money. Arnold had already quietly moved his family back to Kentucky. Now, look at what just happened. The banker checked, the jeweler checked, the mining expert checked. Every filter the country had, this con walked straight through. And nobody dug so much as a hole outside the patch the sellers walked them to. So, who finally caught it? A young geologist nobody had invited to anything. His name was Clarence King. King had spent years mapping a huge strip of the West for the government, and that so-called diamond field sat inside ground he had already surveyed. If those diamonds were real, his life's work was garbage. He did not ride out there purely for the truth. He rode out because his career was on the line. It started with a chance meeting on a train that October. A colleague of King's ran into Janin, who proudly showed off the gems. The colleague went very quiet. Diamonds and rubies do not form in the same place. Finding both in one field is like finding palm trees in a snowbank. King's team rode out in late October into a Wyoming winter. They resupplied at an old army fort and pushed on by mule. All they had was a description of a flat mesa with a cone-shaped hill. And somehow, in early November, they found it. Their proof was a water claim notice staked in the dirt. It was signed Henry Janin. Then King started testing, and every test made it worse. Gems only turned up in soil that had already been disturbed. 12 rubies for every single diamond, over and over again. Nature does not count like that. Would you have caught that? They found little holes about as deep as your hand, punched with a stick. They found an anthill with rubies shoved into the side of it, and boot prints in a ring all around it. King dug a trench deeper than he was tall. He found absolutely nothing. And then one of King's men picked up a diamond and held it to the light. The stone had a facet on it, a flat, polished face, cut by a jeweler's wheel. Rough diamonds do not come out of the ground already polished. The man laughed and called it the greatest diamond field there ever was, because it did not just produce diamonds. It cut them too. King got to San Francisco and spent almost the whole night convincing Janin. The next morning, he walked into the Bank of California holding a letter. The field was worthless. The company and its own engineer were victims of an unparalleled fraud. The ground had been, in his words, fraudulently and plainly salted. And here is my favorite moment in the whole story. One of the directors suggested sitting on the news for a while, just long enough to unload their shares onto somebody else. King told him there was not enough money in that bank to delay it 1 hour. Days later, the San Francisco Chronicle ran one word across the page. Unmasked, Ralston paid the founding partners back out of his own pocket. So, what happened to everybody? Arnold went home to Kentucky, bought land, and opened a bank of his own. He handed back part of the money in exchange for immunity and kept the rest. Then he got into a shootout with a rival banker in the town square. He survived the gunfight and died of pneumonia while recovering. Slack simply vanished. Nobody knew what became of him for almost a century. Turns out he built coffins in St. Louis, then buried people in New Mexico. The man who sold a fortune in fake diamonds died burying people. Ralston lost his bank a few years later and was found floating in the bay. Janin, the expert who got it wrong, was the only honest man who profited. King became a national hero and ran the first United States Geological Survey. Then he lost everything speculating on mines and died broke. Now here's the part I promised you at the start. About a century later, geologists found real diamond pipes along that same state line. A mine out there pulled genuine gem-quality stones out of American ground. Arnold and Slack were lying about the right thing in almost the right place. And there is one more detail that still makes me laugh. Those cheap junk stones they scattered around included pyrope garnets. Garnets like that are exactly what geologists use today to find real diamonds. 2 con men accidentally spread the modern recipe for diamond hunting across a desert. The official government map still calls that empty stretch of nothing Diamond Field. Tell me in the comments which con job you want me to draw next.